Full time at Anfield, and it's finished 0-0 between Liverpool and Arsenal. Well, that was a very painful one for us all to watch, I'm sure, Reds. Good evening and welcome to the Debrief Live on the Blood Red channel with myself, Patrick Smith, and I'm glad to be joined once again by Theo Squires. Theo, how you doing?
Not too bad. Could be better after that. We'll get by.
Yeah, well, give me your general thoughts on that one.
It was a painful watch, wasn't it? I don't think Liverpool had a shot on target until stoppage time, which says it all. They're playing against 10 men for the majority of the game, and not once did they look like they were scoring. Not once did they look like they were playing against 10 men. It was a real struggle. It was a chance for them to put the tie to bed. First leg in front of your fans, get a foot into the final at Wembley, and they've just blown that opportunity completely. I know you've got to get perspective. You can't just say it's the end of the world. The one time Liverpool failed to win a game and they failed to have shots, but there have been a few off days recently. And when you've got Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane at the Africa Cup of Nations, and it's the January transfer window, all the frustrations are going to come together. And it was just a very frustrating night for the fans watching, for the team. They never looked like scoring. You can't really find many positives out of it. I suppose there weren't any injuries, but yeah, Liverpool should have one foot in the final after this, and the fact that they haven't is their own fault.
But it's always difficult when you play against 10 men, and teams do drop back as Arsenal did, with literally two banks of five. Was it Arsenal defending well? Or do you think we had a creativity problem throughout the night there?
Liverpool just didn't create anything. Didn't play the right way. They were very slow on the ball. They were letting Arsenal have the bodies back, and they just didn't look like they were going to score a goal. It is hard when you've got teams playing so defensively, and it is tough to break them down. But the best teams find a way. Like Man City against 10 men, they win this game. They score a few goals in this game. They pass the ball around so well. They find a way. Liverpool don't, and that is the difference in the title race at the moment. And I know this is Carabao Cup, but it's one where if Liverpool go out in the semi-finals and say, it's just the League Cup, but this is a good chance to get to Wembley, a good chance to compete for the silverware. And when you're one of the best teams in the country, you should be finding a way of beating teams when they've got a man sent off and when they're playing with 10 men for so long. This has been a problem for Liverpool for a while now, that they just can't get it over the line when they're playing against less men, like we saw against Chelsea earlier in the season. How different could the title race have been if they managed to perform better in that one? And it's just proving costly. You look at the bench today, they didn't exactly have many options that you could bring on to change the game. You can't just rely on Mohamed Salah and use that as an excuse, saying, he's not here, of course Liverpool aren't going to be as dangerous offensively. You can't rely on one player. You've still got to find a way. And the 11 players out there just didn't.
Jurgen Klopp did name a very strong lineup on paper, but we don't know the exact ins and outs. But a lot of those players were isolated over the past week due to COVID. Do you think that impacted their creativity in the game? Perhaps lacking not only match fitness but match sharpness.
Potentially, you've got some players there who weren't. Like Fabinho played at the weekend, Van Dijk played at the weekend, Firmino, Minamino, Andy Robertson. That's still half the team, and probably does take its toll. Like even if you've got players back for a couple of days, a couple of weeks even, and then half the team aren't, it's difficult to get that rhythm. I think we don't know how much these players have trained. The other ones, we know Trent was only back in training a couple of days ago, and it does take its toll. I think we've seen with all the Liverpool players who have actually tested positive for COVID, when they've come back, they've been sluggish, and it's taken them a while to find their groove. But if it was false positives for so many of these, like they tested positive the first time and then they didn't the second and third time, it's just they've missed training. But they've had a full week here, or 3-4 days training. You'd expect a bit more sharpness from them. Would it have been better if there had been a similar team to the one that beat Shrewsbury? Difficult to say. I think it was a few of the kids were on the bench, but I don't think there was any ever chance of Klopp throwing them on to try and win it. He went to the tried and trusted, the senior players, when it's been the youngsters who've been so good in this competition so far. Only Liverpool will be able to answer that with the medical staff. They'll know the players' match fitness, how much they've all been able to train, if there are those unmitigating circumstances in it, or if it was just another off day. It feels a bit like, I suppose, the Leicester City game away from home a few weeks ago, where they just didn't look like scoring. It's happened again, this time against 10 men in front of the home fans.
Takimi Minamino had a relatively decent night, a couple of chances. I think he had the cross that nearly went in and then lashed another one wide. But how big was that miss at the end, Theo? How important could that really be?
If they go out, it's going to be huge, isn't it? That could have been a winner. That could have been a big moment for him going into this next game at the Emirates next week. But was it a foul or not? We're not sure here. I think there was a confusion after whether the ref had called it back anyway. But you should be doing better. The goal's gaping. You're in front of the cop.
Yeah.
All you got to do is keep your head down, and it's in. Like, you've got a whole game goal to aim at, and you put it over the crossbar. You just need a bit of composure, and it's a shame because while he wasn't amazing throughout the game, it wasn't his best game by any chance. He was one of Liverpool's better players. He wasn't as most spectacular, but he was working hard. He was doing things like the run for the cross, which nearly went in, was superb. Shrugging off Callum Chambers and going halfway down the pitch. But the fact that we're talking about these chances as, these are the highlights of the game, that shows how poor Liverpool were. We're talking about a fluky cross that nearly went in as one of their best chances that are going to rue. A shot near the end that went over the crossbar when they played against 10 men for like an hour, and that's the best chance we can think of because it's the only chance they really had. It's not good enough, is it, in these circumstances, really?
I mean, we mentioned the lack of creativity, but the only player who seemingly was up for it was Joel Matip, who, surging runs forward. He was the only one seemingly trying to make something happen, Theo, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And it's happened a few times this season where Liverpool have struggled, and he looks like the only player who can open it up. But Joel Matip, when he goes on these great runs, he doesn't know where he's going to go for it. So how are Liverpool supposed to work it out? If he was a bit more in control of it, I don't know. He just head down, he runs, he gets past 3 or 4 men, then he realises where he is, and he's like, better give it to someone else. You don't see him like pull the trigger or keep his cool and pick out the killer pass. He's just that sort of player, isn't he? He's got great dribbling ability, but it's rare that he really does something with it that counts in that final third. So yeah, it's another case of we're talking about this as that was one of the positive points of the game, but that shows how poor Liverpool were and how little we've got to talk about. You shouldn't be relying on your centre back to be one of your most creative players, especially when he didn't really create anything. He just got fans out of seats for a couple of moments because he got past a couple of players, but still didn't result in any shots on goal that Ramsdale had to save. Didn't really burst into the box at any point with it. He just gave it to someone else on the edge. We're running out of positives and creative things to say about Liverpool here. We really are scraping the barrel.
I mean, every time I get on the ball, the Copperman shout and shoot for the past 5 games, but I don't think they're going to be shouting that any time again soon. But you mentioned there how Ramsdale had not much to do, but Allison at the other end, thank God for Allison Becker again, a huge save against Bukayo Saka, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's why he's, for me, the best goalkeeper in the world, because he makes these special saves so often, and they're the saves that you don't expect him to make. Like, some keepers get a lot of credit. I think Aaron Ramsdale is one of those that makes saves that you'd expect a keeper to make, but he makes them look like they're good saves. Whereas Allison, he's just so good for one-on-ones. Like, you think, goals gaping, you should just score. He somehow manages to find a way to get something on it and to divert it away from goal. That's why he's one of the best. We've seen it time and time again ever since he joined the club. Long may it continue. But at the same time, you don't want Liverpool to be conceding those sorts of chances too often.
Well, Klopp did make a couple of substitutions. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain looked kind of lively when he came on. Do you think he was brought on a bit too late there with the midfield with, Henderson, Fabinho, Milner seemingly struggling?
He probably should have started because he was more offensive, or at least brought on at half-time. I think I said at half-time that Liverpool should have changed to 4-2-3-1. Like, they were against a midfield that wasn't really there. It was just, I think, one lad on his own with Martinelli and Saka sort of being in midfield and sort of being in a front three as well. Liverpool could have afforded to lose a body there because it's not as though they were taking control of midfield and making it count anyway to get that more offensive player on. But at the same time, Oxlade-Chamberlain, he's not going to win you a game. Maybe he would have done a few years ago, but the Oxlade-Chamberlain was since he's come back from injury, when he's had a few injuries here and there, he's not getting a run of games. He doesn't win you matches. He can run at teams, but he's not going to whack it in the back of the net from 30 yards like he did against Man City. We're still talking about it as a big Liverpool moment, and that was nearly 4 years ago now. Curtis Jones, he did bits when he came on. But at the same time, they're not doing it enough. They haven't got enough to win games. It's more, they could do, and then it's a moment, and you're sitting there thinking, if only Divock Origi was on that bench, because actually he's got those moments in his locker. He is the sort of player you can throw on, and he can win you a game, but he's so inconsistent too. Maybe that's the difference. And I'm not going to say it's going to make Liverpool rethink what they need to do in the transfer market and make them sign a player who can do that, because obviously they cost a lot of money, and Liverpool don't have a lot of money. But when you're losing to your best forwards, you don't have Naby Keita as well. What was lacking on the bench was very clear. The desperation out of it was, you're looking at it, Kate Gordon was probably the one player you think, maybe he could come and turn it on. But you're not going to turn to a 16, 17-year-old in this in a semi-final. Go and win us that game. No, not at all. Liverpool's squad, I suppose the holes in it were showing up tonight.
I mean, someone did provide a bit of width and a bit of, just throwing it in the box. Then was Nico Williams, and all joking and biased aside, I thought he had a pretty decent performance, Theo.
He put in one great cross, which I think was just above Firmino's head at the far post. And it's what he's good at. We know his delivery is superb. He can run players, go past them. But he wasn't going to win this game either. Arsenal just had bodies in the box. It's why Ben White's got man of the match tonight, because it was easy for him. He can just sit on the edge of his own box, the edge of his own 6-yard box, head everything away, kick everything away, and putting a player up there who's just going to cross. That's just going to make it easy for him. That's what he's doing. The one time I think Liverpool got anywhere from crosses was Minamino's nearly went straight in because no one expected it, because it was actually from quite far out and there was no one back. And then one at the end, I think from the left-hand side, which Jota was unsighted for, so it hits him on the head. And then Firmino's unsighted for when it falls down to him, and Gabriel manages to clear up. There was one where Van Dijk, I think, rises with Ramsdale, it falls to Williams, and he shoots just because he sees the goals gaping, but the angle's stupid there. He doesn't get it on target anyway, and Ben White gets it away. But it's just what we've been saying all along through this video. These are the chances we're talking about as Liverpool's best opportunities to score. None of them were real chances, really, were they? Let's be honest. Minamino's the only one where you think that could be a goal. And even then, I'm not sure, because I don't have the audio on the screen in the press box, if it was a foul or not, if it was a free kick or not. But yeah, it was a very poor performance from Liverpool. They didn't create enough. They weren't showing this tactical smartness or anything. They just looked like a tired side going through the motions who didn't know how to find a way to win.
Well, it was a concerning result anyway, but it's even more concerning with the fact we've got Brentford this weekend, and it's going to be a similarly defensive performance from them. What do you think needs to change ahead of that game?
They need to find a way to score. Maybe it's putting Fabinho up front because he got a couple at the weekend.
Maybe it's a question of who, not what.
It's a hard one to find the answer to, because these are the bodies that Liverpool have got. That was the strongest 11 Jurgen Klopp could put out tonight, and it didn't get the job done. It's difficult because you look at that front three, and Roberto Firmino can only do you a job through the middle. You can't put him out wide. He doesn't have the pace for it, what Liverpool need for him. But he is great dropping centrally. But for him to do that job, you need your wide men to be getting in behind. Minamino was trying to do that on the left. Diogo Jota just looks lost on the right. So it's square pegs in round holes. It's not working. Maybe it needs that formation change, whether it's Firmino behind Jota, you can keep Minamino on the left, and you put Oxlade-Chamberlain on the right, just a bit more natural width. Or I can make you very happy and say Nico Williams on the right, just because I know I'm going to get that beam and smile there. Yeah, it needs to be a bit more natural. Jota on the right isn't. He looks better if he's not playing central. He looks better on the left. But even then, he's been at his most dangerous this season centrally. You wouldn't drop Firmino because you don't have anyone else. So these are the players. They've got to find a way to make that front three work. It looked like a front three tonight that had never played together before, and that's because it was a front three that had never played together before. If they're going to win games, those three need to find a way to link up and score goals, and that's probably by finding a way to play them in their best positions. So there is a gaping hole on that right-hand side where Mohamed Salah isn't. Who fills it? It shouldn't be Jota on that evidence. He's your best goal threat. You need him central. And then it's just trying to find everything around that. I'd say 4-2-3-1, but when it's only a couple of weeks, I'm not convinced Jurgen Klopp would change formation for the sake of it.
It's a persisting problem, particularly with AFCON going on, and hopefully Klopp can find a solution, hopefully by the weekend. But we're going to leave it there, Theo. Thank you very much for joining me, and thank you to all of you for watching on as well. Well, that one was a real Granit Xhaka kick to the stomach, wasn't it? But it's not over yet. We've still got another leg next week, next Thursday at the Emirates. So hopefully the Reds can turn it around and go through to the final. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Debrief.